UFOs exist. The U.S. government found quite a number of them.
Numerous alien races and intergalactic wars have been introduced to our galaxy by science fiction. However, we have not encountered even the most primitive alien life form, let alone one with advanced technology, in the real world. Why is that so? One theory holds that habitable planets are few and far between, and that intelligent life is an oddity. It's also possible that more technologically advanced societies exist, but they're too far away for us to ever make contact with them. But what if extraterrestrial life is prevalent throughout the galaxy, and we've been kept out of the neighborhood party on purpose? What is the Pentagon trying to conceal from us? Is anything wrong? Or are we really the only ones in the universe? Let's find out. It would appear that several unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP sightings, have been reported over the past few years. The public at large simply doesn't know too much about them. The government has categorically denied any reports of UFOs or flying saucers in our skies for decades. Not until very recently, though. Okay, so what shifted? The United States government established the Secret Aerospace Threat Identification Program in the Pentagon in 2007. The program's goal was to compile and analyze data on UFO sightings reported to the Defense Department by service members over the years. Luis Elizondo, who had managed military operations for 20 years, joined the endeavor in 2008. He was chosen to head the program in 2010 and honed its emphasis on national security. He received reports of UAP sightings and investigated them thoroughly. One obscure report about a bizarre tic-tac-shaped object above the Pacific Ocean made by two retired U.S. military personnel drew his attention: Navy aviators. The Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was conducting training exercises with Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich. Radar from a ship that was a member of the training group had discovered multiple anomalous aerial vehicles on the horizon that were falling 80,000 feet in less than a second. With a weapons system officer in the back seat of each aircraft, Fravor and Dietrich were dispatched to investigate in separate planes. As they got closer, they could make out a churning pool of water roughly the size of a Boeing 737. The tic-tac-shaped object was hovering above it, according to Dietrich, and it was making no predictable movement, no predictable trajectory. There were no logos, wings, or smoke trails on the mysterious craft. Fravor came in for a closer look, but the thing took off at such a high speed that it vanished before his eyes. Radar picked it up a few seconds later from a distance of about 96 kilometers. That's only the beginning of the story. Many additional sightings were reported by Navy aviators who saw bizarre cubes or triangles do maneuvers no aircraft had ever before been able to, such as stopping suddenly, turning on a dime, and speeding up to 11,000 miles per hour, 17,700 kph, or more. And they were doing all this in restricted airspace, including areas set aside for training fighter jets, such as the waters off the coast of San Diego, Virginia, and Florida's Jacksonville. For decades, researchers have observed a common pattern among the UAP they have been studying: power to defy gravity, rapid and unexpected speeding up, hypersonic speeds with no audible sonic booms or discernible propulsion systems, either reduced visibility or cloaking, and transmedium travel, which is the crossing between different mediums, such as air and water, without encountering any resistance or drag. These traits are the most puzzling to experts in national security. We don't have anything that works like that in our arsenal. Who or what might they be? Some pilots have theorized that the objects were either enemy spy planes or classified U.S. technology. According to Elizondo, however, it would be the most remarkable intelligence failure in United States history if a foreign foe had created these technologies 75 years ago, and we were still unaware they possessed them. Does that imply they came from another planet? Elizondo urges us to keep an open mind and not make hasty judgments. These automobiles could have come from deep space, the asteroids, or anywhere in between. It's possible that we're dealing with a highly developed AI that can replicate itself and instantly communicate with its own copies across great distances utilizing a quantum network. Perhaps our planet is home to an intelligent undersea civilization, and we are now technologically able to observe its members as they travel across our oceans, airways, and upper atmosphere. Do UAPs endanger the security of the country? Although they're clearly powerful enough to do harm if that were their intention, Elizondo argues, there has been no overt antagonism or hostile activity on the part of these things. He warns that sophisticated vehicles should be treated with suspicion if they are spotted flying freely in limited airspace because they may pose a threat if they so choose. Elizondo argues that a whole-of-government approach that is collaborative and transparent is necessary to properly interpret and share observational data with the public. Does the United States government still monitor UAPs? Elizondo continued looking into UAP sightings after funding for AATIP ran out in 2012, but he gave up in 2017 after growing weary of the Pentagon's skepticism. But before he left, he declassified 3 Navy UAP films, and after that, he began to spread the news. The declassified tapes were supplied with the New York Times by Christopher Mellon, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence under Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, who is now a civilian. To convince the Defense Department to treat this national security issue seriously, he said that he had to take this action. The public outcry resulted in Congress taking notice and the Pentagon finally admitting that Aerospace Threat Identification Program existed. The program was then revived by the Pentagon under the new moniker UAP Task Force. The military has authorized its personnel to report UAP sightings. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who was then leader of the Intelligence Committee, requested a declassified report on UAP sightings from the Department of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence by June 2021. The remaining opposition to transparency, according to Elizondo, is limited to a very small cadre of people whose hold over the secret is rapidly eroding. Fortunately, both Congress and the DoD are prepared to treat this issue seriously. It's become a liability for the Pentagon to further a cover-up of these facts because there is enough outrage from our service members and the general public, and we must take that seriously. What is going to be reported? In order to deliver a thorough report, it will be necessary to sift through copious amounts of information, including but not limited to data, videos, photographs, telemetry, signatures collected, and an entire electromagnetic spectrum analysis. The National Archives and Records Administration houses numerous collections of documents related to UFOs or flying discs, which have been extensively researched and analyzed over the years in search of any additional evidence of extraterrestrial life. Records from the United States Air Force, USAF, that have been retired and declassified are included in the Project Blue Book papers held by the National Archives. The United States Air Force conducted these studies between 1947 and 1969. 12,618 sightings in total were recorded to Project Blue Book during this time, according to a U.S. Air Force fact sheet. The project, which had its headquarters at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, was officially terminated in 1969, with 701 of those remaining unidentified. Can UFOs be proven through these records? Other records have surfaced throughout time as records at the National Archives have been handled and cataloged. Michael Rhodes, an archival worker, was sorting through hundreds of boxes of Air Force records just a few years ago when he noticed a doodle in the corner of a test flight report page. The drawing drew his eye because of its uncanny resemblance to the flying saucers in popular science fiction films produced at the time. Rhodes claimed in the National Archives Pieces of History blog post Flying Saucers, Popular Mechanics, and the National Archives on July 8, 2013. The crew of Japan Airlines Flight 1628 sighted a UFO while flying over Alaska, according to a number of data from the Federal Aviation Administration that are available online at the National Archives. Simulated radar images and a report on the incident that ran in the Philadelphia Inquirer magazine on May 24, 1987, are both available in the National Archives. The online catalog for this collection's records includes notes taken during interviews with the 3 crew members who saw the UFO. According to Marie Brindovas, a metadata technician at the National Archives in Seattle, Washington, the papers were found as part of the Alaskan digitization effort. The Army's inquiry into flying discs is covered in a film of Major General John A. Samford's statement on flying saucers from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. on July 31, 1952, which is among the audiovisual UFO records held by the National Archives. What proof of the existence of aliens and UFOs might be discovered at the National Archives when additional records are searched, processed, and declassified? That will have to wait. But judging by the past, it's obvious that researchers and UFO enthusiasts will keep looking for new data. The tremendous interest in the presence of extraterrestrial life and UFOs continues to spark intense debate throughout the world. Is there a link between the rare element 115 and extraterrestrial raft? The 115th element is somewhat of a mystery. It wasn't officially recognized as a chemical element until 2016, but for decades it has been the subject of speculation about its possible links to alien technology and civilizations. Intrigued? Let's first determine what element 115 actually is before attempting to determine whether there is a relationship. As with all elements on the periodic table, the element's number corresponds to the number of protons in the element's atom. Element 115, or moscovium, is a man-made, super-heavy element with 115 protons in its nucleus, which is 23 more protons than the heaviest element you can find in large quantities on Earth, uranium. The rare element 115, which is created one atom at a time in particle accelerators, is only present for a very brief period of time before decaying into another element. It is special because it is close to a predicted island of stability, where some super-heavy nuclei might have much longer lifetimes. Instead of existing for less than a second, they might exist for minutes, days, or even years. That is long enough that we might be able to use them for practical applications. How was it created? A team of researchers led by nuclear physicist Yuri Oganessian discovered element 115 in 2003 at the Flerov Laboratory for Nuclear Reactions in Dubna, Russia. The element was then given the name moscovium because Dubna is a Moscow city. To successfully fuse the nuclei of americium-243 and calcium-48 atoms, the scientists bombarded americium-243 with calcium-48 ions that had been accelerated to about 10% of the speed of light. This process resulted in 4 atoms of moscovium, which is a super-heavy element that requires the complete fusion of 2 lighter elements. It took years for scientists to figure out some of the intricacies concerning moscovium. And it wasn't until 2018 that Berkeley Lab researchers determined the element's mass or atomic weight, which is the sum of all the protons and neutrons in an atom. They produced about 1 atom of moscovium per day, and that atom was captured by an instrument called Fiona for the identification of nuclide A, which to the untrained eye looks like a small metal bank vault. So far, moscovium hasn't been used for anything other than scientific research. But they were able to nail down this crucial number by repeating the process that the first discoverers used to pin down the element. What is the aliens' connection with element 115? Although element 115 wasn't formally identified until 2003, its name has been associated with extraterrestrials, flying saucers, and other paranormal topics for decades. We're talking about the long-lived tale of Robert Bob Scott Lazar, who in 1989 revealed what he claimed to be top-secret information about element 115. Lazar claimed to be a former employee at Area 51, the well-known and highly classified section of the Nevada Test and Training Range operated by the United States Air Force, where his job was to reverse engineer crashed alien flying saucers, an element that heavy cannot be created here on Earth. The chemical must originate from a region where naturally occurring super-heavy elements are possible, according to Lazar. 9 alien spacecraft allegedly used some sort of propulsion system that harnessed the inherent power of gravity and thus utilized the characteristics of element 115 to work their technological wizardry, according to Lazar, who claimed to have seen evidence of anti-gravity propulsion technologies. The majority of his assertions have never been completely refuted, as several sources have noted, and the government doesn't acknowledge the employment of anyone who has worked at Area 51. Fundamental science continues to refute his statements, nonetheless. No, the assertions of Bob Lazar have nothing to do with this discovery, stated Gates. Presently, all the created atoms of element 115 have decayed way too fast to be used to fuel UFOs. For the people who are immersed in these advancements on a daily basis, that's more than enough. After all, moscovium is an amazing element. Gates said that it is a sign that we're pushing the limits of what we know about the universe. So instead of the excitement about little green men and incredible spacecraft, we're left with real, tangible, and equally thrilling science. We have made over 100 atoms of element 115 and are starting to understand its nuclear and chemical properties because element 115 is unique in that we can create it more easily than some lighter elements like element 112 or element 113. Normally, as we add more protons, it gets harder to create a new element, but this trend is broken around element 115. However, 115 is suspected to have mostly rapid decay isotopes, just as the gold has 37 different isotopes and only one is stable. Therefore, hopefully in the future, we will on a version with a longer half-life, even if it only ends up being a few atoms of it. Alternatively, the aliens may simply prefer to observe life in a closed system, or they may have ethical reasons for not interfering in our technological and cultural progress, similar to the Prime Directive from Star Trek. A more sinister interpretation can be found in Ball's laboratory hypothesis. The aliens don't talk to us because we're part of an experiment they're conducting. In the end, it is impossible to predict the objectives and convictions of a fictitious advanced civilization. Thanks for watching another episode of Voyager. While you're still here, make sure to click the video on your screen for more mind-blowing videos about space.